in the first opinion that was released, this is the last day of the court's term, the Supreme Court severely limited, maybe entirely, the ability of district court judges to issue these universal injunctions. This has been resistance 2.0. This is what they've been using to stop the Trump agenda. And if you could have heard John Sauer, the Solicitor General, go in there to argue this case, he was saying all the things that you and I discuss all the time, like judges, they forum shop. They pick their favorite federal district court judge in the most liberal jurisdiction. And they go in and ask that guy, gee, hasn't Trump violated the law? And shouldn't we issue a nationwide injunction on that executive order and that executive order and that executive order, and therefore shut down his entire second term agenda? It's been working. You just find the most liberal judge, you make your case, you get your nationwide injunction, and yet another piece of Trump's agenda is done. And this court was listening. They said, you know what? You're right. And the answer to potential executive overreach is not judicial overreach, pretending we have more power than we do, to stop executive orders, to stop executive initiatives on a nationwide basis, as opposed to on a plaintiff by plaintiff basis, where we look at this plaintiff to see if he's adequately alleged harm and decide whether, for example, an executive order should be enjoined in this case. Okay, so as a result of today's ruling, these leftists likely will not be able to march into a far left judge in Boston or in San Francisco or in Washington, D.C. and get a Trump policy they don't like put on hold or ended while their case plays out in the merits, which could take years. This particular case stems from a very interesting issue, which, just FYI, has not yet been decided. It's Trump's executive order putting a stop to birthright citizenship, meaning if you're born here, you have citizenship, even if you're born to two illegals. Trump's trying to challenge that, saying the Constitution is actually a little bit more ambiguous than it sounds. And there is some legal support for that. But that case is going to play out on the merits. And eventually there will be a ruling on whether he's right or wrong on that. The justices did not get to that and whether his executive order is constitutional. Instead, they got to whether these lower court judges who had stayed the effect of that order, who have said, you cannot look at babies being born right now to illegals and say that they're not citizens. Lower courts have said you cannot say that until we've got a final ruling in this case. And the Supreme Court said, okay, you can stay the effect of this executive order as to the named plaintiffs in this case, but we are not okay with the nationwide injunction thing. Not in this case necessarily, and not in all cases. We are convinced lower courts don't have that authority. Came down 6-3 along ideological lines. Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing the majority opinion. The dissents were blistering. They're so upset. So is David Hogg. So you know it's a good day. And we'll tell you all about the back and forth that went down between Justice Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson in particular. In another major win that I mentioned a minute ago, the justices letting Maryland parents opt their children out of classes with LGBTQ storybooks. And don't make any mistake, this ruling is going to be applied well beyond what was being shoved down the throats of these Maryland children. That case was also 6-3, with Justice Alito writing the opinion. Let me just start it here, okay? That one was for you, Scott Pelley. We've gone through this together. Moms of Liberty went on 60 Minutes with this guy trying to say at very young ages, schools are shoving leftist, woke ideology down the throats of young children, and it's inappropriate, in particular, sexual materials and LGBTQ materials. And Scott Pelley told America it wasn't happening. Watch.
There are rogue teachers in America's classrooms right now.
Rogue teachers.
Rogue teachers.
Parents
correct.
send their children to school to be educated, not indoctrinated into ideology.
What ideology are they being indoctrinated into?
Let's just say children in America cannot read.
They often dodged questions with talking points.
You're being evasive.
21%
What
of Hispanic
ideology?
students are reading
You're
on grade
being
level.
evasive. What ideology are the children being indoctrinated into? What is your fear?
I think parents' fears are realized. They're looking at these books where sexual discussions are happening with their children at younger and younger ages.
Tiffany Justice read from sexually explicit books written for older teens, but found in a few lower schools. Most people wouldn't want them in a lower school. But in a tactic of outrage politics, Moms for Liberty takes a kernel of truth and concludes these examples are not rare mistakes, but a plot to sexualize children.
You see, that was Moms for Liberty, just expounding just a kernel of truth in what they were saying. And then they bastardized this kernel to make a larger point. Screw you, Scott Pelley. In a 6-3 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court just said it is happening. It's absolutely happening, and parents have a right to say no. Here's Justice Alito. The storybooks here unmistakably convey a particular viewpoint about same-sex marriage and gender. And the board has specifically encouraged teachers to reinforce this viewpoint and to reprimand any children who disagree. That goes beyond mere exposure. We reject this chilling vision of power of the state to strip away the critical right of parents to guide the religious development of their children. It is happening. It's happening in schools beyond Maryland. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized it and has now just issued a powerful ruling arming parents state to state, coast to coast, with the tools they need to shut it down when it comes to their child. You're woke. You want to let your kid go in there and learn about chopping off his penis when he's 12. More power to you, sister. I think it's abuse. I think it's sad for your child. You want that. I think it's sick for a teacher or a school district to offer it at all. But there's zero chance I'm letting my child sit there. And as everybody listening to this show knows, I have not just talked that talk, I've walked that walk. It's why we left our schools in New York, as I documented at the time. We left schools we had previously loved because they tried to indoctrinate our children on the issue of gender and race. And we had it. And now we finally have a Supreme Court decision saying, we were right. Schools don't have the right to do this to our children. This ruling says religious grounds will give you the power you need to get your child out of it. That's not going to be a problem for most of our listeners. Most of us are religious people, not all of us, but most of us have a good faith religious belief that what is happening here is deeply wrong in the K-5 school districts and can use this, but it'll be expanded beyond this because parental rights are not limited to those who are faithful. It's been a great day at the U.S. Supreme Court. Great. We are days away from what has been dubbed by some the Rio Reset, what some worry could be a threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, that's Russia, China, India, and Iran, and some more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering, its value. Some report that they've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? One option is to diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word MK letters to 989898. July 6th could mark a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.